This could open a whole new world for those people who are, have needle phobia or just not comfortable injecting themselves, yet can still get the benefits of.
I saw this great presentation where the military uses vagal nerve stimulation and improves a soldier's ability to spot a threat.
But we are seeing a lot of new trends that are coming out from these conferences, especially that are at a scale like the Biohacking Conference, things that are there to be shown for the first time. And
buyer beware. There's good there. It's legit, but but you've got to be careful in your consumption. There's a lot of bullshit.
Number 2 was something that I came across for the very first time, and it low-key blew my mind. It was
the reason I kind of poo-pooed the Apple Watch, and I did. I mean, it's an accurate heart rate measurement. So if you're measuring just straight heart rate with exercise, excellent tool. It's a good tool for measuring HRV if you have the wherewithal to go in and then filter the data. And I think this is a huge opportunity for Apple right now, or someone who writes an app. And I think the technology's there to be able to accurately measure down to very low millisecond intervals. But how you report it's critical.
Welcome back to the 90% Healthy Podcast. I am back from a few days of riding a high of being in a community that truly is super curious and wants to know everything about biohacking and longevity. So I'm bringing a lot of topics to talk about. But before that, Don, how are you doing? You missed out. I wish you were there.
Well, and I missed you guys too. What Klaudia is talking about, she just got back from the Biohacking Conference down in Austin, Texas, Dave Asprey's Biohacking Conference, which is probably one of the largest collections of, we'll use the term biohackers. I think that term deserves some time figuring it out. But it's people who are stepping forward to take ownership of their health, life, longevity, performance. And it's a pretty fun group to be working with. That now, not 100% of the stuff that is said there or presented or showed do I agree with. And I think this is where it's nice to have someone who, to have an advisor working with you. But on the other side of that, I have invested heavily in that show. I own much of the technology that has been shown there, that has been shown to be beneficial. So it's a great gathering, and we have just developed such great friends over the years that it's kind of a family reunion as much as anything.
Yes, 100%. So many times I run into the people who I met at the conference, and we kind of keep in touch throughout the year, but we all live at different parts of the country or the world. And then when we come together at this one, it just feels like you belong there because people understand you. There's no judgment at all in what you believe in, what you wear, what you look like, how you're dancing, whatever. It is just one of those things where you can be truly yourself and learn a lot about how you become better.
Absolutely a mothership event. No two ways about it.
Yes.
And what's interesting about this is, so Klaudia and I met at a little show down in Southern California in Orange County. What did they call that? I'm blanking on it right now. It was a little...
Did we meet at Rat Fast? No.
No. It was that thing that Stephen E. did down there in Orange County.
Oh, yes. Wake Up OC?
Wake Up OC, that's it. It was Wake Up. Now, and that has since gone by the wayside, but we had been working out in I had been working out in Southern California. Someone brought this to our attention. And we were building a brand at that time. We were working with Longevity Labs, and we went there, and you were one of the first people I met there in the industry. We bonded on the fact that we have a background in HRV, and this happens time and time and time again. So you meet all these people that become friends. Now, and I'll tell you, if there are promoters out there, you have these big events like Wake Up and Wake Up's not a big event, but like the Biohacking Conference, A4M. They have big, nice, but at some point in time, this has got to become regional and then local. So where Wake Up was very much a local event, it really appealed to Orange County and in Western Orange County. Right now I'm up in northern Indiana, just 5 minutes south of the Michigan border. The RV park we're staying in right now, the gal that I was doing some business arranging our stay, and she's wearing a pullover that says Fort Wayne Integrative Medicine. And I said, Tell me about Fort Wayne Integrated Medicine. We started talking about it, and the practitioner that started it has since passed away. And they're trying to find a doc to come in here. But we're talking about functional medicine, integrative medicine, all these things. Um, and that was kind of cool because I didn't have to get on an airplane to go talk to someone in Beverly Hills or Boulder,
Yeah.
Colorado or something like that. It was someone I met here in Howe, Indiana. It's spreading, but I still believe there's some opportunity here for promotion. And if there's a good promoter out there, this is an area that is expanding and getting stronger. And I believe we are just starting to see the wave rise. We're not even close to the crest.
100%. And even at the conference, I think it was 4,000 people who were attending. So it was the biggest yet. There's always something new. I mean, as much as we've talked about this, the power of community is just invaluable. But we are seeing a lot of new trends that are coming out from these conferences, especially that are at a scale like the Biohacking Conference, things that are there to be shown for the first time. And over time, they become a little bit more mainstream. I mean, I'm sure Biohacking Conference talked about ice plunges back in like the first two
Right.
or three
Or
conferences,
they
but
go away.
yeah,
There's one or the other. They
yes,
come, they show their thing. They either get roots, and again, the good scientific ones will get roots and grow, and the ones that are questionable, they eventually fade away.
that's true. So yeah, so we brought some top trends that we're seeing that are expanding and coming into this industry and becoming a little bit more trendy in this world of health optimization, longevity, biohacking. But before we go down that rabbit hole, I wanted to ask you a question that one of our listeners brought to our attention in commenting on one of the videos. And he asked about the accuracy of the Apple Watch compared to other things. And I believe he pointed out that HR measurement, but I think we wanted to clear the slate here for a second. So I wanted
Right.
to pass that over to you.
Well, so again, we got the message. Me being the boomer, I had to reach back to Klaudia to translate it for me. It was AWHR. And I'm like, okay, what's AWHR? And she's like, I think it's Apple Watch. I'm like, well, that's brilliant. And so let's put this in perspective. There is heart rate, and then there's heart rate variability. These are two different KPIs. These are two different variables, indicators that we look at in order to accurately measure heart rate. If I've got a resting heart rate of 60 beats a minute, that means I need to be able to pick up on that beat once a second. That's 1,000 milliseconds, okay? If I start exercising and my heart rate climbs to 120 beats a minute, okay, that means I'm getting 2 beats per second. That means I need to get a beat every 500 milliseconds. I need to be able to accurate. And we can do that. And the Apple Watch does an excellent job of that. Okay, I don't want to minimize that at all. If we're going really hard and I get up to 180 beats a minute, that means I need to detect that beat every 300 milliseconds, 333 milliseconds actually. And we can do that. You can do that and the Apple Watch uses a technology called photoplasmography. It's shooting a laser through the back of your wrist, and it's bouncing off the blood flow, and it's making these interpretations. And the research is very clear. That's a very accurate mechanism for measuring heart rate. Now, let's talk about heart rate variability. With heart rate variability, we're measuring the time between heartbeats, and we're measuring the change in that time. It's called interbeat intervals, and we're comparing those. We may be measuring those down to 2 to 5 milliseconds, where to get an accurate heart rate, I'm at 1,000. When I'm measuring HRV, I may be dealing with 2 to 5. So it could be 500 times more difficult. With that short range. So this is where the breakdown comes with using technology, using PPG. Now, PPG has been demonstrated to accurately measure heart rate variability as well. Oura Ring has great papers out there. There's great, a product that really wants to play in this space will publish papers that say, here's how our measurement came in, and this is how it compares to a wired EKG. So good companies do that, and you should ask for that. And so here's the other challenge with Apple Watch. So we measure the interbeat intervals. And then we run mathematical calculations on top of those arrays of data. So the one that you see most likely is what's called the root mean square of successive differences. Okay. So they square the average and they take the root of that. This is an indication of it's an excellent indication of vagal tone, the tone of the vagal nerve, how much communication is going on in the vagal nerve. Now, another analysis that we can do is called the standard deviation of NN intervals, which is really the same interval, but it's just measuring the standard deviation. And this is very much a measurement. It's a little bit more towards sympathetic tone, towards the fight or flight signal. Okay. Apple Watch measures SDNN. That's what they report. Everybody else reports RMSSD, vagal tone. So you need to be aware of that, first of all. Now, the second challenge with the Apple Watch is that if you're measuring heart rate variability and you're trying to use it to determine, am I improving or not, you need to have a similar measurement epoch, okay? I like to measure one of 3 times. My preferred measurement is nighttime resting average and nighttime resting peak. Those are my two favorites. The reason I like those is you're asleep. Your perception of stress is now minimized because I'm asleep. I don't have incoming at that. I'm recovering, and arguably sometime during that sleep, you're going to have the highest measurement of restoration during that time. It's the highest level. So let's talk about the second best time. The second best time is to measure first thing in the morning when you wake up. Okay. The challenge with that is this. There's 2 of them, actually. Number 1, you've got to get into a routine. You wake up, you go to the bathroom, you come back, you get your measurement, and then you can lay down and do your measurement. You get that. Most of our lives don't provide that level of consistency because kids come running in, you got to walk the dog, what's going on? As soon as you wake up, there's incoming. And unless you're really nailed down on your process, the data is just really, really inconsistent. And I've worked with a lot of great athletes, and frankly, I just didn't get good compliance. And now, was that a failure of mine for not communicating the importance of the data? Perhaps. I mean, I'll take some responsibility there, but it's also a pretty hard process to do. Now, the third time that when I'm working with athletes is we will measure right before practice many times. So there are systems, whether they're from First Beat or Omega Wave or things like that, where I can measure an entire team at one time. I can put a transmitter on my athletes. I can lay them down. I can turn the system on, and I can measure 40 HRVs at one time. And this is using ECG, so it works really well. And the way I characterize this is where I prefer nighttime resting is this tells me, okay, have I fully optimized the last 24 hours of stress and recovery? Where do I stand from that? The challenge with going the first thing in the morning is when you begin to wake up, your circadian rhythm, the circadian process starts with a cortisol release. So when you start the waking process, your body recognizes this and says, waking up, we're going to need some energy. So let's go ahead and dump some cortisol in so that we're starting to free up some energy sources so you can start your day with that. Well, you're automatically putting stress into the equation. Now, arguably, the stress is always the same, so you can take that into consideration, but that morning measurement is a very good measurement. It's just low compliance in my experiences, and you have to deal with that cortisol dump that comes with the circadian rhythm. And then the third best time is right before practice, but it turns out for my teams, that was the only time I could get a solid measurement because first of all, we didn't have Oura rings back then. Oura ring, I think, was on version 1. We didn't have them in the system yet, and I couldn't get morning compliance with my athletes at home, college students at home. I couldn't get the morning compliance. So we did it right before practice. And I always characterize that to the coaches. The morning measurement tells me, did you recover from the work we did 24 hours before? And the pre-practice tells me, is this athlete ready for the load I'm getting ready to put on them? So I still don't mind that pre-practice measurement, even if I have nighttime resting. But the two things, the reason I kind of poo-pooed the Apple Watch, and I did, I mean, it's an accurate heart rate measurement. So if you're measuring just straight heart rate with exercise, excellent tool. It's a good tool for measuring HRV if you have the wherewithal to go in and then filter the data. And I think this is a huge opportunity for Apple right now, or someone who writes an app. If you will write that app that goes on the Apple Watch, and I think the technology's there to be able to accurately measure down to very low millisecond intervals, but how you report it's critical. So that's the two ways I look at that. And that's the reason I made the comment the way I did. But, I have an Apple Watch and I use it less and less every day because it bugs the shit out of me when it's buzzing all the time when I get and that makes me crazy.
Yeah.
But I tend to have a little different tool on my wrist most of the time. This is what's called a Now Watch. It's another pretty elite sensor. Their software isn't quite there yet, but a very elite sensor. And we will do another episode on, we talked about RMSSD and SDNN. Okay, two different interpretations of similar data. Well, there's other ways we can interpret this data as well using frequency analysis. One of my favorite is frequency analysis. Low frequency, high frequency ratios tells me a ton. And frankly, this is a challenge for me that if I want LFHF data from someone, I have to bring in a whole nother system to get it. I wish I could get it if I could get it from an Oura Ring. I believe the data's there. It's just from a corporate standpoint, they don't see that as a market. And I get it.
Yeah.
I'm kind of a freak.
Because it's when it comes to that LFHF data, it's just very technical. And I'm not sure that consumer level understanding and desire is there to
I
really
agree with that.
untangle that.
But that's not an excuse not to go down the road. As I was having a conversation with a manufacturer last week, and I said, your opportunity is in branding. Your opportunity, because I don't like the term stress. We've talked about this on the show before. Stress is just external pressure from something, right? And we have distress, we have external pressures that lead to a dysfunction, or we have external pressures that create a eustress, a stress that we grow from. And so the term stress is a little too vanilla for me. And then because stress is good.
Can be.
When managed correctly. You and I, we kind of get off on well-managed stress, There's good things that come from it. The chemicals in the brain, when everything's working, get into flow state. There's not a better place to be.
Yep, and stress is the underlying trigger for adaptation, and the body loves adaptation. That's what we're meant to be. We meant to have a high adaptive capacity in order to build the resilience that will make us bend, not break when life happens.
And just adapt. Yeah.
Thank you for explaining that. That was very cool and technical. So I really hope our listener got the answer to his question.
Thank you for asking questions. We love that. Please send them in. We have so we pay attention to that, and we would love to be able to dig in. If you find it beneficial, please ask.
Yes, please do. We're always happy to discuss on air and even send messages via email or in our comment section. So very eager to
what's cute, what I love about this, and it's what I love. It's okay. You're looking at the Don Moxley brand right now. I love it when people reach back. And I just recently, one of my old students is a coach up here at the University of Michigan, and they were struggling with an athlete and had some questions. And she reached out. I love this stuff. I love being able to help. Again, for me, it's like being at the front of a classroom. And if I don't know it, I'll go look it up. I'll figure it out for you. So please, that's why we're here, and we really want to help you if we can.
So we do. All right, let's move on and jump into those trends, because I'm curious of your opinion on whether these are really here to stay, or maybe they're just having that moment and then slowly will dissipate.
You're testing my ability to predict the future.
Yes.
So I should have gone and gotten a magic 8-ball so I could shake it and say,
or like a pendulum.
Yeah, there you go. But listen, I've got a lot of experience. I've seen a few things. We can talk about it.
So one of the things that I've seen, not just at the conference, but within the industry and overall, we've talked about this, the boom of peptides. And obviously, it's reaching mainstream with the weight loss peptides, but even in the world of muscle building and bodybuilding and just strength and resilience and even women's health,
just physical
other types of
optimization.
peptides.
Yeah.
Yes, health optimization. Other peptides are starting to hit the stage. And I heard apparently it was like exclusive, first time telling you type of thing, where this researcher woman, her name is Sarah, she developed this new way of delivering peptides through a buccal, which is one of those things that you put up in your roof of the mouth or like
Yeah,
within
the
in
tissue in your
between the
mouth. Yep.
tooth and the lip to dissolve it. Injection, don't get me wrong, is still going to be number one in terms of efficacy and delivery. However, this could open a whole new world for those people who are, have needle phobia or just not comfortable injecting themselves, yet can still get the benefits of peptides.
Hmm.
And peptides just have fantastic research behind them. And have you used any peptides, by the way? I've never asked you this.
Sure, sure. So, I listen, I use GLP-1s. They're great. I'm an insulin resistant human.
Mm-hmm.
It's a nice little bump to my, it helps my environment. So yes. And I've used different versions of those peptides for years. I also, listen, I'm a huge fan of BPC 157.
Yeah.
Now, I don't think the ideal consumption rate is injected. I believe BPC 157 is best consumed orally because of its impact on the gut. I think that's where it's just a beautiful tool. So to go back and answer your original question, they're here to stay. Now, but it's still buyer beware. There's still, I don't think it's a good idea to make a decision on a peptide or something based on an Instagram influencer.
Amen.
Just call me, a little bit conservative, which is the only time you'll call me conservative. But yeah, I don't, but so you want to do the work. I think BPC 150, I think there are a few peptides, and we were talking earlier before we started recording. We have a mutual peptide friend that we want to get on the show to talk about, but I think peptides are here to stay. Listen, what is a peptide? A peptide is a small string of amino acids. It's typically the larger part of a protein that's able to land on a receptor. Creatine. We've talked about creatine in the past. Creatine is 3 amino acids. It's a small protein. It's a peptide. GLP-1s, insulin is a peptide. In the hormone world, our body uses hormonal communication. Those hormones come from either sex hormones like testosterone, estrogen, progesterone, those are bigger molecules, or they come from small peptide hormones, insulin, glucagon, things like that. So absolutely, I think peptides are here. I think the buccal is an excellent delivery space. We were playing with buccal-based delivery with cannabinoids, and then you can coat them in not lysosomes.
The
Anyway,
liposomal.
liposomal. Yeah, liposomes. See, if I'm talking autophagy, I have to think lysosome. When I'm talking, it's liposome. But so they coat them in little fat molecules. So they cross the gut, they cross the buccal very well. These are excellent tools for delivery of molecules. So listen, I'm a fan. I believe it's still buyer beware though, too.
Yes.
And I think you have to be careful. I think it's cooled off just a little bit recently in the last year. 2 years ago, when you went, it was the peptides were everything. Now, the drug companies are starting to push back a little bit on this. The FDA now, the current FDA, I'm not sure there's going to be a lot of pressure on peptide distributors right now. So, and the list can be endless. This science really started in the Soviet Union, in Russia, and there's still good work going on there. So our mutual friend Katrine Valinsky, we've talked about this before. Maybe we should get Katrine on to talk about this because she has an excellent handle on this. But I think it's real. I think it can be an outstanding tool. I don't think it's a silver bullet.
Like nothing is. Yes.
There's 4 silver bullets.
Yeah. Yeah.
Exercise, nutrient-dense food,
Sleep.
quality sleep, and light. Those are your 4
Yes.
silver bullets.
Yes.
So,
But nothing in isolation.
but nothing
They'll
in
need to have
isolation.
that
There you go.
combo. But also, yeah, I love that you mentioned that people need to be careful because much like with supplements, there are peptides on the market that, do not have the efficacy or are not pure as much as they're advertised. So it's so important
Yeah,
to just look at the website, talk to your functional medicine doctor, talk to your physician about it, and also look up, does the company have certificates of analysis? Like, do they
yeah.
go to work to do third-party lab testing to make sure that what you're getting is non-toxic, it's pure, and actually will work?
Yeah, I think on the peptides, you definitely want to have a pro involved. There's no
Yes.
doubt about that. This is not something that you try on your own. Like there's some nutritional supplements, whether it's a protein powder or creatine or a mineral supplement or a vitamin. These are all excellent to try on your own, see how you feel. I don't think you want to do that with peptides.
Yeah. Okay, number two was something that I came across for the very first time, and it low-key blew my mind. It's called infrared fabrics, infrared
Right.
clothing. So it's these minerals that are manufactured into the fabric itself. And when they touch your body, they, using the heat that your body emits, they return that heat as infrared energy, which is very beneficial for your cells to increase oxygenation, for your blood flow, for just increase. I am blanking, but it's just
Well, it's the
really,
benefits of sauna. You're
yes, it's the,
getting,
yeah.
yeah, from wearing the clothes. So, real deal. So, first of all, I see this as real deal stuff. I had the opportunity to work with a company out of Britain called Chimera, and they are one of the manufacturers of these clothes. And I'll tell you, the first time I saw it, I thought, what the fuck? But then I met with the company, I met with their founders, I met with their scientists, and I'm like, okay, this is interesting. And what you see is that, it's funny. I remember seeing a special on compression therapy. And one of the things that really triggered performance professionals into the benefit of compression therapy, when they added this to like an NBA team's routine. Compression therapy was the first thing the players came back and asked for. That made them feel better. And that's interesting evidence. It's evidence that you'll have compliance. It's evidence that they feel good from this. And now, is there evidence that there is a biochemical, a biological change? Well, yes, there is. There actually is some decent evidence here. So I think the recovery clothing, listen, I think this is the real deal. As with everything else, it's always a buyer beware, because who knows? Because I see some clothing advertised and demonstrated, and I'm just like, you had me until you did the demonstration. And they're doing some kind of a muscle balance test, and I'm just like, yeah. And I have good friends that work for that brand, and they do a nice job. Just homie doesn't play that game. And you know what? I'm skeptical. I'm a pragmatist. Bring me data, bring me objective data. The subjective that you got with the recovery clothing is very interesting. My daughter coaches at the University of Pittsburgh. They have a deal with Chimera. Her team wears this recovery clothing when they travel, and the girls swear by it. Okay, so it's much like that response that the NBA got with the compression therapy. So I think it's the real deal, but it's still a buyer beware.
And that was my first question when I was talking to their co-founder. I'm like, do you have research? And they have 10 published studies in boosting oxygenation in the body and increasing grip strength through the utilization of this wristband that is infused with infrared technology. And I tried the grip strength little test. So I did a baseline, which with this grip strength, I
Grip strength
can't forget the name.
dynamometer, yeah.
Yes. And my grip strength was 70.3 pounds. And then put on the wristband, hung out for like, I don't know, 15 minutes, 20 minutes, if that max. And then did it again, and it went up to 81.3.
Okay.
And I'm like, okay, because that's what they say, that they can increase grip strength by 10, 15% with this. And I'm like, that is really, and obviously we now know that grip strength is a huge link to longevity and health span and just overall musculoskeletal health. So it's
We should
interesting
take
to
that
see
apart
how.
just a little bit.
Yeah, please.
Yeah, so grip strength. Does making your grip stronger make you live longer? Well, probably not. But let's look at what grip strength is evidence of. If you have
Yes, it's a
overall
proxy.
body strength, your grip strength will represent that, because your grip actually calibrates to the rest of your body. And if you don't have the ability, let's say you have a hurt shoulder and you grab a hold of something that's going to re-injure your shoulder, your body will lower the grip strength available to you in that hand so you don't hurt your shoulder again. That's how grip strength. So as grip strength improves, it means you're strong, everything's working, and your body's saying, hey, I'll go ahead and give it to you. So that's what grip strength. Now, here's the challenge with the demonstration that you did. And I don't want to minimize it, but I'm going to. From the standpoint, if I want you to bench press 250 pounds. Okay. I can go lay you on a bench press and put 250 pounds in your hand, and you can or you can't. Can warm you up. As I do a test and I go back and retest with no intervention, there will be an increase. That's the way our body works. We have inhibitory nervous signals to our muscles. We have a signal that says squeeze, but then you also have these little signals in there and say, yeah, squeeze, but not that hard. There was a great study years ago. We've heard the story about cars falling on kids and mothers picking up the cars to get the kids out. We have an unbelievable capacity in our existing musculoskeletal system that frankly has to be governed back. Because if we could flex our muscles, we'd tear the tendons off the bones, we'd break bones. I mean, this can happen. So that's where warm-up comes into play. Now, and then we have placebo. If I warm you up a little bit and I slap a little placebo on you and you think you're going to do it, it's going to move. Placebo is a beautiful thing. This is where the need for objective data comes from. Now, I'm going to make a statement that I'm going to second guess myself. That's why we do the big population-based studies. Say, does this work on a population? If I randomly assign 1,000 people to 2 different treatments, is there a difference? We can demonstrate the difference. We can see that, and any good study has that bell curve kind of an effect. But from an applied level, and this is something that I take a lot of pride in, when I have that bell curve, I have a ton of people in the middle and I got a few out on the ends. And we call these, the farther you move from the middle, those are raising levels of standard deviation of error. Well, I can have this average response in the bell curve, and I can have someone with an even greater response out in the third standard deviation to the right. But I can also have someone out here in the third standard deviation left that's not getting any response at all. Okay. And this is the role of applied science. And this is where it's nice to work with people who understand this, because, we know that in order to calculate your resting heart or your working heart rate, your max heart rate, we can take 220 and subtract your age. Well, that works for about 2/3 of the population, which happens to be about 1 standard deviation to the right or left of the mean. That means 1/3 of the population doesn't fit that equation. When someone comes to work with me in my facility, we'll start with 220 minus your age. But as an applied science, I'm watching this person, and is this equation working for them? Am I seeing the respiration response that I would expect? Am I seeing the work response that I would expect? And then I may have to make adjustments. And what we found is that when I have a facility where I'm working with athletes, I have to then go ahead and do a dedicated graded exercise test to find someone's thresholds and maxes on about half the people, because some are way too high and some are way too low. Some are in the middle and they do just fine. So that's the nature of research. So let's go back to the main question. Grip strength dynamometer, great test. I think it's really important, and I think it's a great test for longevity. It tells you overall strength. But don't just do grip strength and think you're going to get better. You got to do strengthen the whole body. It's evidence that the whole body's stronger. Number one. Number two is this infrared clothing. It's legit. And I'm not still pragmatic. I'm still a bit of a pragmatist on it. I want to make sure. So that's the reason you're always looking for the objective data to go with the subjective to back those up. That's why it's so important.
That's awesome. And I agree. There needs to be always a little bit of grain of salt on it with all of these promises that are so easy to blow your mind. And the other way I wanted to put this to the test is, so there was another test that I did. It was based on, I'm not sure, you probably have seen it. BrainTap does this HRV measurement, but it was not with BrainTap, but the scientist who usually works with BrainTap, Francisco. So he did this test, which showed not just my HRV and etc., but also showed a number for my circulation, which tends to be on the lower end. I knew because I tend to have cold hands and cold feet, especially at the end of the day. And from a maximum or ideal of 300 number of circulation, whatever metric that was, mine was 30. And he was like, what is going on? And I'm like, so I asked him, what should I do? And he was like, well, do you do red light? I'm like, yeah. But I usually do it, just like tend to be here or just more localized if certain spots are sore. And he was like, put it on your hand, put it on your feet. So serendipitously, this company selling that had this infrared technology had the wristband and socks. So now I'm sleeping in those socks and that wristband. It looks hilarious, but I generally sleep in socks anyways because my feet are cold. So I'm just kind of seeing how it changes my sleep overall and potentially my HRV and just how my body can tap into a little bit better overall
This is
parasympathetic
this is
state.
where having the data is. Listen, I am in the middle of a big discovery of my own. We talked about it on an earlier podcast, but when we were out in Lake Tahoe this winter, I saw the biggest returns of HRV that I've seen for the last 5 years. I mean, my numbers took off. Now, my first response was, we went skiing end of December, beginning of January. My motivation went through the roof. And I said, I'm getting my fat ass in shape, back in shape, because I've been fighting this knee. The knee, I skied for 2 days in big mountains. My knee did good. And I'm like, okay, I'm good to go. So now I'm starting to put the work in. And I got to where my average nighttime resting HRVs were in the 80s and 90s. I mean, they were sky high. So we came down off of the mountain, came back east. So I'm down at sea level now, and I'm doing similar work patterns and we're talking for periods of months, okay, that this is going on for. And I'm not able to duplicate the HRV or the resting heart rate response that I was getting out there. And I'm like, is it altitude? Is this the key component? And you know what? We're going to test it again because I'm going back out west this winter, and we're going to find out. But this is where having the data really pays off. So whether you've got the Aura Ring or whatever that's building a case, I'm able to go back. I'm able to go back and look. I had this knee surgery that I had that was so problematic 4 years and 5 years ago, 2020. It was August 2020. And I have data all the way back till that. And you can see when I got ill. You can see my HRVs drop from 40s down to the teens. And I'm flirting with HRV in the teens and 20s for close to 2 years. Okay. So it tells you there's something going on in my body. And I really feel like I just finally healed from that infection December, January. And you know what? Knees not hurting as much. And I sent a thank you note to the Hyperbaric Center in Las Vegas that I worked with Misha Tate and Desert Moon Wellness. I sent a thank you note. It was a year ago, the Dave Asprey show, that I started to use the whole stem regen protocol. And I saw a similar response from the stem regen protocol that I did from hyperbarics, okay? Particularly lowering inflammation, my knee's ability to respond to stress. And I'm now back to pretty much full go. I'm not limiting any of the work that I do. In fact, I'm training hard enough that I'm having to take days off because I'm pushing it hard enough. Been in that situation for years. But yeah, having that data to be able to go back and examine and make some decisions with is really, and I think that's the ultimate biohacking. The ability to go back and look at response and, so it's all good.
That's the only way to really filter out what's working and what isn't working. Like, I don't want to do everything. I don't want to have a million things in my nighttime routine or morning routine or just in my day that are completely useless and make no difference for me. So that's why I am a huge believer in put it to the test. Let's see what the data says. Is it moving the needle? Or maybe you can just leave it out and save money and spend it on something else and energy and time.
Completely agree.
But I love that you mentioned stem regen because the next trend that I did see coming on and possibly something that's definitely here to stay and hopefully become more accessible and more affordable is stem cells and exosomes. All of this, which is turning on your own body's regenerative processes and really just allowing for that recovery to take full fold in order for you to go ski with your daughter.
Right.
And it's just so many different ways now that people are utilizing both exosomes and stem cells. And exosomes are these messengers that tell stem cells to get to work, from skin health through IVs to injections. And it seems to be working, but it's pricey.
And there's a lot of bullshit. Okay, let's be clear. There's a lot of bullshit in the space. I mean, I was watching something this morning on the news, and here's a skincare product with stem cells from plants.
They won't survive stem cells.
And I'm like, there's a lot that goes into this space. But let's be really clear. Elite athlete populations that have the money to do this are doing it and swearing by it. So I take a couple steps back. My brother was a doctor of veterinary medicine, and he was a very talented surgeon, and he was playing with stem cells and RPR and things like that, PRP, excuse me, 10 years ago, and telling me about the response he was seeing in the dogs he was working on. And so it's been coming, and I believe it's the real deal. And when you're dealing with the right doctor, now you can't, I mean, stem cells are not something you can get out of traditional medicine, really. I just isn't there yet. Insurance isn't paid for it. Standard of care just isn't there. So it's coming out of pocket. It's worth educating yourself on, but there are hacks. And again, this is what the STEM Regen, Christian DePro from STEM Regen, he was a stem cell scientist up in Montreal. They did the work. They found these plants that boost stem cell circulation in the body. I mean, subjective, there's this Calumet Lake out in Oregon that people are using the algae and getting healthy. There's subjective evidence that the algae made you healthy. They went to, I believe it was University of Montreal, where Christian was. They developed objective data that says, wow, this boosts stem cell circulation. And you know what? For me, it's been a great addition to my program. And I have evidence, both subjective and objective, to back that up. It's not just placebo. And then I continue to play. There's also techniques with pulsing. Do you take this every day for the rest of your life? Do you take it for a period of time? I have found I did 6 months straight. I did 3 months straight of super supplementation. I mean, 2-3x what's recommended. Graduated that down as I got better, and now I'm pulsing. Right now I'm going a month on, a month off. And what you know, when pulsing's working, the week after you go off, you feel an uptick. Your natural system's kicking in, doing something. So, and then I go back on for a month, and it's been a great tool for me. But exosomes and stem cells are real. I don't know that I would go to a clinic where the doctor retired from orthopedic surgery last week and now they're doing this as, a part-time job. They have invested in this. There's great stem cell docs. There's great docs out there, these functional medicine docs. I love the doctors that I met out at SSRP, Seed Scientific Research and Performance Program, and they actually have the Peptide World Conference, okay? So these are excellent doctors talking about peptides, stem cells, things like this. These are the doctors I go to for this advice. Stem cells tend to be kind of under the radar still right now. Again, you're seeing it in pro sports and high performers. I see this stuff with, people going down to Mexico and getting
I was just
all
going
the
to say, be
facets.
careful.
Well, I'll tell you what, it's brutal because you get a stem cell injection and your body responds with an inflammatory response. Okay, so if you go get all your joints injected, you've got a week of hard living coming up because your body's like, what the F did you just do to me? And so it's interesting.
I think there needs to be like a pre-process and a post-process if you're doing stem cell therapy, because if you have a high toxic load, stem cells will act on your system differently than if you have done some type of detoxing, or at least really got your shit together before doing it, and then allowing stem cells to work and doing the post work to really allow them to work in as efficient as possible.
Let's get a couple doctors. Let's do a podcast on stem cells. Let's just go after this. I mean, we'll reach out to Christian. We can reach out to some other stem cell docs. I've got a couple people that we can talk to, and let's just really get on top of this because I do think it's legit. I think it's here to stay. Listen, I've said buyer beware now on all of them. Peptides is buyer beware. Infrared clothes, recovery clothing is buyer beware. Exosome and stem cells is buyer beware. There's good there. It's legit, but you've got to be careful in your consumption. There's a lot of bullshit.
And in this industry, there will always be. I mean, that's why you and I are here, so we can cut through the bullshit because there's a lot.
Well, yeah, we'll just give you the consumer's view a couple times. I mean, so, we'll, like I said, what's funny, Klaudia, the first time I went to the Biohacking Conference, I think it was in Las Vegas when we did, I don't remember. Oh, no, it was Orlando. And I'm like, big eyes, what a cool show. I met one of my favorite contacts ever, Jim Stray Gunderson and his wife Holly from Be Strong blood flow restriction bands. I'd seen Jim's work, but they were in the booth right behind us, and we bonded. But we lost Jim a couple years ago, but I'm still good friends with Holly. And I'll tell you what, that was 4 years ago. Klaudia, I'm pretty comfortable saying I'm doing 90% of my exercise right now while being blood flow restricted in some way. That's how effective it is. It makes a huge difference. Now, at the same show, I'm walking around and I start asking questions because some of the vendors are talking about a technology. And I'm like, that technology is operating almost exactly opposite of the way you would expect it to, whether it's oxygen or low oxygen or things like that. And you ask a couple questions and they really struggle to have answers. And you know what? That technology isn't at the shows anymore. I think they've gone away. And maybe, I didn't mean to piss on their campfire, but it didn't need to burn that bright. And I just ask questions. So we do a lot of that. It's not like when you go to a medical conference like A4M, everything at A4M has got stacks of certification and research and things like that. It's a medical show. Medical professionals expect that. Consumer show, it can change a little bit, but it reminds me, I'll tell you, I tell people the story. So there's a big show in the fitness industry that used to be called IRSA, International Recreation, Sport, Dance or something. Well, it's now turned into the Health and Fitness Show. And I went to IRSA 1988. Okay. This was like the second or third show they've ever had. Well, biohacking now reminds me of IRSA back then. There's a lot of breakthrough stuff. Now, IRSA has gotten completely, it's now called the Health and Fitness Show, and it's all about the big providers, the Precors, the Life Fitnesses, the Cybexes, and so forth.
Yeah.
But I love the feeling of the entrepreneurial stepping into a space, examining new space, and it's good. It's all good.
Okay, I feel like this episode is either going to be a two-part or we're going to stop at 5 trends and then do the other 5 next week.
I think that makes a lot of sense.
Yes, I think so. So we got 2 more to get through. And the next one is something that you put on my radar. And then serendipitously, it's just kind of the world started to bombard me with that. And it's not just through my feed, but just in terms of friends and colleagues who have brought my attention to this. And that's vagus nerve stimulation. We're going to do a separate episode on this because it deserves it, or at least a couple maybe.
Yeah.
Can you break down for us what vagus nerve is for anybody that's unfamiliar with this term and why it's important?
So the vagus nerve, it's one of your cranial nerves. It's one of the 12 cranial nerves. And the vagus nerve, vagus means wander, means to wander. So this is one of the biggest nerves in the body, and it runs down and basically interacts with all your organs. Excuse me, I got the hiccups. And so it takes a lot of energy to digest food. Okay. So when you've eaten and you're digesting, your vagus nerve says, hey, you're recovering, you're digesting, turns the organs on. So you have the enzymes and these things you need to digest food. But if you're sitting there and a lion walks around the corner and the body says, ooh, that's a threat. And through the brain, down through what's called the amygdala, into the hippocampus, it sends the hypothalamus, it sends a message. You need to move or you're going to be somebody's lunch. They're going to be digesting you. And so it shifts you from rest and digest to threat state, to what we call, why am I blanking on this?
Fight or flight.
Fight or flight. Fight, flight, or fawn, which is interesting. I'll tell you, I'm also doing some work looking at what's called polyvagal theory that we can talk about later on, but there may be more to this. But when you look at what medicine struggles with, medicine is struggling with this vagal nerve stuff and again, we said earlier in the episode, I don't love the term stress, but when you look at someone who is not managing stress well, who's not planning their stresses well, you're going to be in a constant state of fight or flight, and this messes up the rest of the processes. The communication for this goes through the vagal nerve. That's why it's so important. And so there's a new technology that's called vagal nerve stimulation. And it just sends a little microvolt. So your vagal nerve comes out the back of your head and it goes down what's called your carotid sheath. So you have your jugular vein, you have your carotid artery in there, and you've got the vagal nerve that goes down through there too. So I have a vagal nerve stimulator. I don't have it here with me. Basically, you put this thing on the vagal nerve and it sends a little microcurrent in there for 2 minutes. The data on this stuff is ridiculous. I'll tell you, it caught my attention at A4M out in Las Vegas in December. They had used vagal nerve stimulation in treating traumatic brain injury. and then there was a really interesting study I found. There's a group out there called the Vagal Nerve Society. They sponsor framework for presenting. I saw this great presentation where the military uses vagal nerve stimulation and improves a soldier's ability to spot a threat, like on a radar or on an image. So it improves cognition. And so this immediately got my attention. So if this vagal nerve stimulation can help a soldier see something on a radar or on a photo, will it help a goalie identify a ball coming at a goal? And I think there's a lot of reasons for sports and performance to pay attention to this technology. Now, I'll tell you, I've been using it now for almost a month. I've not seen a remarkable change in my HRV data yet. But it takes time. I'm willing to invest in this and put it in. But the vagal nerve stimulation, listen, while I have some elements of my physiological profile that said I may have had some trauma in my past, I've not had the overt trauma of like either sexual assault, physical assault, things like that. I guess I've been assaulted physically. I'm an old wrestler, and I've had my ass handed to me time and time again. But I think when someone is struggling with this vagal nerve response, trying to get HRV up, I think vagal nerve stimulation is legit. And the reason I say this, all these things that I've said, and I'm not even going to say buyer beware here. I think this technology is pretty solid. They've got it on the market. Now, I've not seen anything that advertised that I would stay away from. It's not cheap. I mean, I saw you with the Pulsetto, folks. I mean, that device is what, 3, 4?
Yeah, I think they have a sale of like 270 or something like that, but it felt so nice. And when you put it on them for the first time and it turns on, it's like, oh,
Yeah.
that's zapping me.
Yeah.
But it does feel very calming, and it makes sense how that stimulation, I mean, and don't get me wrong, the vagus nerve can be stimulated without a device. I mean, deep breathing exercises and just even massaging it can stimulate the vagus nerve, but consistent practice is very important to truly increase that vagal tone and vagus nerve activity to really optimize your parasympathetic state. And we've talked about this. We live in a chronically elevated sympathetic world where we're constantly in stress, and studies have shown that those people who have chronic stress, higher sympathetic states, they have a lot more inflammatory markers circulating in their blood. They've measured it with looking at C-reactive protein. They measured it by looking at interleukin-6, which are all inflammatory markers, which down the road, if not handled, can lead to those chronic diseases that we deal with later in life, or even in early stages like autoimmune diseases, diabetes, cancer. All of these things have been linked to these increased inflammatory markers within the blood. And frankly,
which
the association...
which are regulated by the vagus nerve. That's the important part. They're being driven in all of the body systems.
It's mind-blowing. It's just how much this one system that I think is highly undervalued and underestimated in just the world of general public, because not many people talk about training their vagus nerve or just giving it a little bit more TLC in order to really boost their parasympathetic activity. And now these tools that I'm seeing at these were all just super simple, that you hold there or it stays there and it does the work for you. And it just...
Did you see Truvaga there?
Yeah, I'm not sure. I saw another one that I cannot remember the name of it.
Little
so there
white
was
disc.
one other one that it's a handheld.
Yeah, so I have a Truvaga, and actually, I've set up an affiliate relationship with them. If you'll go to my website, Train, Recover, Win. I don't have it up on the website, but I'll have to get my ass in gear now and get it up there. So, it gives you a little look, like I said, and there's other ways. Okay, that's direct electrical stimulation of the vagus nerve. Other tools will stimulate vagus nerve. Like when you do that search, one of the things that will come up will be Apollo Neuro. And we have, I have a great relationship with that company. David is a friend. We met way back in the early development of that product. That stimulates vagal tone. It's not the electrical stimulation right on the vagal nerve, but it's a nice tool. And I love my Apollo Neuro. I think I've set up an affiliate relationship with them too, but we'll have to check. I don't know if I have that up there yet or not. But yeah, good tools. And I'm a huge fan.
Yeah, so I definitely see that people are becoming more curious about it, which drives up the offerings and the different types of tools that are entering the industry. And it's interesting because Pulsetto, for example, it's a company out of Lithuania.
Mm-hmm.
It's a company. It's just interesting to see how some of these things are coming out of Europe. I mean, look at Aura from Finland,
Yep.
making
Yep.
it global. And so yeah, and it all started. I talked to, I think, their co-founder and at Pulsetto, and he said that his wife used to have these cluster headaches and nothing would work. And then that was pretty much the genesis for Pulsetto to be born, to work on that vagus nerve and really help
Yeah.
relieve that tension. So it was interesting.
Yeah, like I said, I think that's one of the things. Listen, did 5 topics today. So we talked about the Apple
Hold on,
Watch.
we've
We've
got one
worked a little.
more.
I think we should save it.
Okay,
Let's
we
say
should save it.
let.
Okay, because that's one that everybody's talking about and everybody's using, but so many of you are using it wrong. So
But if we
let's,
go to, I'm looking at it, and if we go down that rabbit hole, I think we
yeah,
need to
those,
sit on it.
yeah,
Let's
yeah.
let's tease the people a little bit. But what have we learned? We're very listen. This stuff is not completely established. Meaning, and everyone's different. So that's what makes such a difference. So whether it's proteins or creatines or minerals or whatever, everyone's different. And we spend a lot of time talking about the normal curve. One of these people out here, 3 standard deviations to the right or 3 standard deviations to the left. You might be the 99th percentile, or you might be the first, but you still could be in the study, but they only reported the averages. So being able to work with a professional on this is important.
That's why biohacking is N of one. You gotta
Yes,
figure it out.
but you got to
What
have a
is working for
tool
you?
running on top that you're collecting data that you can make some good
Yes.
decisions with. Because I'm not a feel guy. I don't do feels.
You don't, okay, we gotta talk about this one time. You don't, like intuition,
That's
gut
different.
feelings. Okay,
That's different. Okay.
okay,
Yes, I depend on my gut.
okay.
And frankly, I have a very nice large gut to depend on. Thank you. While the rest of the world goes for a 6 pack, I have a cake. Um, but I don't. When you do these again, my True Vega, it asks me at the end, how do you feel? Or my
Mhm.
Now Watch asks me, how do I feel? I don't like that.
Yeah.
Tell me what the data is, and over time, and this also goes back, Klaudia, to an earlier episode that we did, is that do you make your decisions based on what your numbers say that day? The answer to that question is no. Okay, you got to get something out on the horizon. You got to get that spot out on the horizon that you're working for, the trainable life event, the thing that makes your life better, the thing that you take pictures of and put on the wall. This is where I had FOMO as I was watching all my friends down in Austin posting all the stuff, and who was the DJ?
Steve Aoki.
Steve out, yeah. And I mean, what an event to have Steve there.
It was so fun.
Your boy here would have been up in bed, okay, because I got past that a long time ago.
But there was nano V and there were red lights, so you didn't have to like come and jam out in front of the stage. But
No,
there
no,
were
no,
some other little biohacks.
I'll tell you what, the red lights that I saw, the light coming through the back of my eyelids would have been just fine.
Yeah.
So I would, and I would have woke up the next day and I'd have felt like $1,000,000 and we would have been jamming.
Yeah.
But that's fine. I get it. It's not me. Listen, if it's a wrestling tournament, I'll sit there and watch it all night. Um,
Yeah. See,
you
that's how
know,
we're different. I'd be up in bed.
yeah, you'd be up in bed. Right? And you and my wife, my wife went to one wrestling match with me one time. She says, okay,
That's
that's out
so
of the way. I'll
funny.
see you later. And so, but yeah, and again, there's legit FOMO. But, we'll keep working on this and keep building it out. And again, hopefully become a resource for our listeners who have questions about this. And if you do, reach back and let us know.
Yeah. And like we said in the past, too, the science is constantly evolving. So we're bringing you what is happening now, but within a month or 2 months, or maybe next year, there's going to be a new study that's coming out about vagus nerve doing XYZ. So that's why we refer back to science, but it changes. So bring us the questions, bring us something that you may have come across. Is there a paper you read and you want us to kind of take it apart, whether it's true or whether scientists just cherry picked certain stuff? So let us know.
This is the challenge in living. What's interesting is we're living in this social media time, which social media is a type of peer review. You put the information out there and you get feedback. Unfortunately, the feedback sucks. I mean, I do not read the comments in social media because it's usually just a bunch of grumpy old, I don't know, it's valueless. Okay. But it's interesting. And I'll tell you, my wife and I sit in the morning and we will be scrolling some social media, kicking up Jim DiNicolantonio has an excellent feed. Dr. Jim D. Nicolantonio does a great job. And his application, the way he does things, Christian Drapeau, his work on stem cells has been excellent. There's some really good stuff. The nitric oxide work, Dr. Nathan Bryant does. Christian and Nathan were two of my favorites to be on a dais with when I was working with Longevity Labs, because I knew their science was solid. And I think they thought the same thing for me, that when we were up there, they were getting the same thing for me. We're hitting different elements. I was doing autophagy. One was doing stem cells. The other was doing nitric oxide. But they all interlaced. So there's some good stuff, and hopefully, if you have questions, you just let us know.
Let us know, and we'll bring you the other 5 next week.
There you go.
This will be great. Thanks so much, John.
Have a great day. Have a great week.
Have a good day. See you soon.